Chapter 8, Section 2, Photosynthesis, an overview. Today we'll be looking at characteristics of light, in particular looking at the spectrum of light. We'll be looking at pigments and what part of the spectrum that they absorb. I want you to be able to draw the structure of a chloroplast and looking at the parts of the chloroplast, know what happens in each place. And then look what the light-dependent and light-independent reactions do in photosynthesis. So how would you design a system to capture light? Well, plants have solved these issues and we are going to look at those. So we have chlorophyll and chloroplast. Chlorophyll is what is inside of chloroplast, and chlorophyll is a pigment that is able to capture energy from the sunlight. If you look at sunlight, it is a mixture of different wavelengths. And if you look at the wavelengths that come from the sun, here you see gamma rays to the left, all the way to radio waves on the right. Well, in the middle here, between ultraviolet and infrared, is the visible light spectrum. And these are the wavelengths that we are able to see, and we see them as colors. If you can remember the name Roy G. Biv, that'll help you put them in order of wavelength. So you have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So the sun, or rather plants, are able to gather light with molecules that are called pigments. The main pigment in plants are going to be chlorophyll. What color do you think chlorophyll is? Well, chlorophyll is green. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about why chlorophyll is green. So the two types of chlorophyll found in plants are chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. And they absorb the light that's in the blue-violet section, and they absorb light that is in the red-orange section. So if they absorb that light, what color light do they reflect? That's right, it's going to be green. So that's why we see green when we look at plants. Now, plants also contain red and orange pigments called carotene, and this absorbs light in other regions of the spectrum. Okay, so carotene absorbs if you look here, it's the blue, the violet area, maybe a little bit of green. So if they absorb all of that, what are we going to see? That's right, we'll see the red-orange area. So think about when leaves turn orange, or when they turn red, or when they turn yellow, that's when you're able to see the other pigments. So the chlorophyll has kind of stopped absorbing what it absorbs, and the other pigments have come into play. So when the weather turns cold or the temperatures drop, chlorophyll starts breaking down, and that's when you're able to see the red and orange. Now in the chloroplast, member, are the organelle that does this. Inside the chloroplast there are what are called thylakoids. Thylakoids are the little stacks, if you look at the picture here, where a thylakoid is. Those are the little stacks. Looks like stacks of Mentos or something like that. And the stacks are called grana. So each one of those little discs would be a thylakoid, and the whole stack is called a grana. Pigments are located in the thylakoid membranes. That's where the pigments are. And then the area outside of those stacks, or outside the thylakoids, is called the stroma. You might want to sketch this little picture down here of the chloroplast. So this chlorophyll is able to absorb the light, and this light, it's able to transfer this light energy to electrons. These high energy electrons are what make photosynthesis work. Okay, now if you look at this picture here, I have what's called, or there are the light dependent reactions on the left and the light independent reactions on the right. And you have this picture, And you need to know what goes into the light-dependent reactions, what goes into the light-dependent reactions, and what comes out of them. So in this process, we have what are called electron carrier molecules. Electron carrier molecules. So what's an electron carrier molecule? It's a compound, chemical compound, that can accept these electrons and transfer them, along with most of their energy, to another molecule. Because remember, we're trying to gather this sunlight and turn it into chemical energy that's inside of the carbohydrates. The high energy electrons produced by chlorophyll are highly reactive and require a carrier. One of the carriers we'll be talking about is NADP+. This is a picture of it. And no, you do not have to memorize this or even know what it looks like. I just wanted to show you that it is a chemical formula, or it has a structure. And we'll be calling it NADP+. It's called nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. So there's no way I'm going to make you memorize that, but NADP+. So when you think of a high energy electron, the analogy you can use is the hot potato. And if you want to move this hot potato from one place to another, you don't just put it on your hand, you have to put it on an oven mitt. And the oven mitt could be the carrier to transport our NADP+. So the hot potato has 2 electrons on it. The NADP+ is our mitten, and it carries those electrons, the form of hydrogen, see the H+ there? And becomes NADPH because the hydrogen's added to it. And then when you put it on the plate, those electrons are transferred again along with the hydrogen plus onto the plate. So NADP plus can hold 2 electrons along with the hydrogen. So when it holds those electrons, it's converted from NADP plus, the ion, to NADPH, the molecule. Okay, main thing you need to know that NADP plus is the carrier molecule. When it gets the electrons, it changes to NADPH. So if the H is there, it's got the 2 electrons. So what are the reactants and products of photosynthesis? This is the overall look. The reactants are water and carbon dioxide, that's what's taken in. And then the products are going to be sugar and oxygen. And sugar, we're talking about carbohydrates. Do you remember the formula of the sugar that I told you to memorize for glucose? Well, here is the reaction written in words and in symbols. You might want to stop the video and write this down. So we got carbon dioxide and water going in, sugars and oxygen coming out. So in photosynthesis, carbohydrates such as starches are produced, and then energy is provided to make other compounds like proteins and lipids. So from the carbohydrates, your body uses the carbohydrates to make the proteins and lipids. So photosynthesis involves 2 big parts: the light-dependent reactions, meaning that light has to be present for it to work, and then the light-independent reactions. So in the light-dependent reactions, they use the sunlight, and what is produced? ATP, we talked about ATP before, and NADPH. And this happens in the thylakoid membrane, within the thylakoid membranes. Now, we always say that plants need water. Well, they need water to grow. And how do they grow? By making food, okay, by making carbohydrates. But the water is also required as a source of electrons and hydrogens. and then oxygen is released. And that's the oxygen that we breathe. So if you look at this picture on the bottom, on the left-hand side, you see water going in. That water actually gets split. And the hydrogens are what get carried over in that NADPH, and then the oxygen is released into the atmosphere. And that happens during the light-dependent reactions. Now, these products, other than the oxygen, go over to the stroma of the chloroplast, and you can see the NADPH goes there, ATP goes there, ADP comes out, NADP plus comes out, CO2 goes in, and sugars come out. Sorry about that train in the background. Okay. Now in the light independent, do you think light is required? No, no light is required. And this part takes place in the stroma. So light dependent happens in the thylakoid membrane. It uses water and light. Oxygen's given off. NADPH is a product. ATP is a product. All of that goes into the light independent reactions along with the carbon dioxide. And what's produced? We have sugar, NADP plus, and ADP. In the next section, we'll be talking about individually how all these things are used. But right now I want you all to just get the general picture of what's happening. And you've got to know what goes in each, the light dependent side and light independent side, and what the products are of each side. So plants use sugars produced in photosynthesis to make what? That's right, starches. The raw materials required for plants to carry out photosynthesis. What needs to go in it? That's right, water. The principal pigment in plants. That's easy. Okay. The colors of light that are absorbed by chlorophyll. Now remember, chlorophyll reflects green, so it's going to be all the other colors.